Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited for today's video. It is the mid-year book freakout tag. Let's jump in. I don't know why I get so excited for this video every time I go film it. I didn't film it last year, but I have done this a couple times in years past, and every time the same thing happens. I sit down, I'm excited, I'm like, let's see the books that I read for the first half of the year, and then I go and look back and it's so disappointing. I don't know why that happens to me. Does that happen to anybody else? Like, I feel like I've done so great with reading, and then I check back and I'm like, what is this? Of course, there are standouts. We're going to be talking about them today, what my favorites have been, what my most disappointing, pretty books. We're going to be talking about it all. The first question is the best book you've read so far for the year. Of course, I have two because it's really hard for me to make decisions. I don't know what it is, but is it a surprise to anybody that I'm holding this book up right now? Funny Story by Emily Henry. It's been the book that has made me the happiest, my favorite book, the one that has kept me engaged the most so far this year. Here we are following Daphne, and at the beginning of the book, when we start off the book, she is happy, she is engaged. I think she's like weeks away from her wedding when her fiance comes to her and says, hey, my childhood best friend Petra has declared her love for me and I'm leaving you and I'm gonna be with her. And she's like, what the hell? Literally like weeks before their wedding. And so he tells her, I'm gonna go on vacation with Petra and I'm gonna give you a week to get the out of this house. And this is a house that they both bought together, even though it is under his name. But she finds herself after this like alone in a town that is basically his childhood town. Like she moved there for him. It's his friends, so she doesn't have anybody. And then we have Miles, which is Petra's boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, if you will. And obviously she's left him for her childhood best friend. I can't remember his name right now, and we're not even gonna bother because he is crap anyways. So Daphne and Miles sort of become roommates. He makes this proposition like, hey, obviously I know what you're going through and I know you don't know anybody. I think they like run into each other, and so they end up being roommates and they help each other out through this grieving process. And it was just fantastic. It just really filled my heart. So this is my first favorite book of the year. My second one would have to go to Razorblade Tears. You're gonna be seeing these two books a lot during this video because I feel like they've been the best two books that I have read. I read Bruises on a Butterfly, 5-star read. I loved that book as well. Lobisona, I loved as well. But if we're talking about like impact, funny story, and Razorblade Tears, here we are following two fathers, Ike and Buddy Lee. They are from different sides of town. They are different races, but they come together because they have found out that their two sons, which were married, have been, and so they come together to find who the killers are of their sons. It was such a fantastic read. I talk about this book in whatever wrap up, and I talk about how I usually don't tend to like books with important topics like race, political things, or anything like that. I just don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I want my fiction to be fiction. I've said this a million times. This author really knows how to do it well. Question number 2 is best sequel that you've read so far this year. Now, I haven't read many sequels. I think I've read like 5, 2 from the same series, the Ruthless Fae series. I have also read the Improbable Meet Cute series. I read all 6 books or listened to all 6 books. But the one that I'm choosing for this one is gonna be Cazadora, which is book 2, and I believe the last book in the duology of Lobisona by Romina Garber. I loved both of these books so much. I gave Lobisona 5 stars and I gave this one 4 stars. This is just Argentinian folklore of La Lobisona, and we follow Manu. She is undocumented. This is for book 1. I'm going to be telling you book 1 because I don't want to spoil anything, even though really you can't spoil If you read the title and you know what that folklore is, you sort of know what this book is about. Long story short, we're following Manu. She is undocumented. She is in Miami with her mother, and she's sort of hiding. Number one, because like I said, she is undocumented. But number two, she has a special characteristic that makes her stand out through her eyes. And so her mom really is keeping her on the down low because undocumented again. And then number two, she is scared that the dad of Manu is gonna come and kidnap her, like him and his family. So she's always kept her like really hush hush, very like stay low, don't cause attention. She wears sunglasses. And so obviously there's more to the story with the folklore and stuff, but basically it's just Manu finding herself, trying to stand out in a world which makes her stay very guarded and very invisible almost. I love this. I love the relationships, the friendship. This has a whole like magical school aspect to it as well that I really enjoyed. And overall, even though I loved book one much more than this one, this is about sequels, so definitely going with Cazadora. Such a pretty book as well. You know we can't go through this video without me talking about pretty covers. Number 3 is new releases you haven't read yet but really want to. The 2 books that I'm going to be talking about, they are both auto-buy authors. Usually when I go for auto-buy authors, I don't look at the synopsis because they are auto-buys. I'm going to buy them and I'm going to read them regardless. And one of them is Ruth Ware's One Perfect Couple, and the other one is the back of the book. Megan Miranda, Daughter of Mine. These are just 2 books that I was hoping to read. I think it was last month that they both came out, or the beginning of the year at some point, but I haven't gotten to them yet. This one looks so summery, even though it's all blue, but you have like a beach background, some palm trees if you can see them there. Oh, it just looks perfect for summer. And then Megan Miranda. I need to catch up on Megan Miranda's books because her release last year I haven't read either. I get distracted by the covers in my viewfinder. I apologize. And again, I really don't know much about what those 2 books are about because I'm reading them for the author and I'm sure they're gonna be fantastic. Or at least I hope. Am I in focus? Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I'm not one to really keep track of upcoming releases. I know, like, what kind of reviewer am I? But there is just one release that I am over the moon about, and that is Josh Malerman's Incidents Around the House. I don't remember when this book is set to come out, but I am so excited. If you don't know, Josh Malerman is one of my favorite authors. I think this has to do with this little girl, and we're hearing the story from her. I think she's 8 years old, and apparently in this house there's an entity that she calls the other mother or other mommy or something like that. And I'm just super excited to see what this is about because it sounds like it's going to be so creepy and I'm so ready for it. Question number 5 is the biggest disappointment so far this year, and it pains me to put this book on here because Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. I talk about this in my May wrap up as well, and I hate that I'm putting this book here because I was so excited. I loved so much of the book, but then the ending just kind of fell for me. It was super predictable, but I think I figured out why it was that it was a disappointing read for me and why I was expecting something else. First, let's start off with the premise is about 3 siblings. They come together, the death of their mother. They're coming together to just sort things out in the house. They've been estranged for years, so they're coming together. Things are awkward, but they start going through their parents' possessions. They find this box of VHS. Now, the mom used to film everything around the house. They got her a camcorder. She used to film her daughters, just making memories. When they pop one of them in, it's from the 90s, and everything is going fine until the scene cuts, and the next thing you know is that the dad is popping up on camera full of blood and asking the wife, please just put that away. They're outside, it's nighttime. He's like, put the camera away. I need you to come with me. There's been an accident, but please put the camera away. She never does, and she films everything, which is basically a dead body. It's actually a girl that had gone missing back in the 90s that these kids knew. And so They have a bunch of questions. They're going on this quest to find out where this girl is and what happened the night that this was filmed. But basically they can't find any other clues. It was a fantastic read all the way until the big reveal. When I read You Shouldn't Have Come Here last year, I think I read it last year, released last year, I believe. I was so like wowed by that ending. I mean, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, but for me, I really enjoyed that ending. So I was expecting something like that in Home is Where the Bodies Are. But I guess when what I predicted came to be, I was left kind of like, oh, it wasn't like the same effect that I got from the other book. And that's what I was expecting. I was expecting like an ending like, oh, like she was gonna blow me away. And usually when I predict something that happens in a book, it really doesn't take the enjoyment away from me. But with this one, it did. And I guess it was just because of that, because I was expecting her to like twist it and turn it around, and it never came. So that's why I'm putting it here, but I still recommend reading this one because it is a solid read, and I've said this before, but Geneva Rose, I love her way of storytelling. So definitely give this one a check out, and if you have, let's talk about it in the comments because I'm interested to see if anybody else felt the same way with this one. Biggest surprise of the year has to go to Trust by Hernan Diaz. I just really enjoyed this. I am so glad I chose this book to read this year and that I decided to go out of my comfort zone. I read this because it is the 2023 Pulitzer Prize winner, and one of the challenges on my planner, on my reading planner, was to read an award-winning book, and I chose this one, and I am so glad I did. Let's keep it down here. And I am so glad I did. This was just an amazing ride. So this is basically a book about a book. This is broken into 4 sections, and the first section we are reading a novel called Bonds, and then the 3 sections or stories after that is correlating to Bonds. I loved reading Bonds. It just basically tells the story of how these two people met. They're sort of like introverts, or at least one of them is, with Benjamin and Helen, and their marriage, how they got together. And then you go into the 3 sections, which I'm not really going to talk much about because that would be a spoiler. But 2 things I loved about this, like I said, was the novel Bonds. The beginning, that story was just really captivating. And then the moment you realize how the other stories correlate to Bonds, I loved that part so much. So this was a real huge surprise, and I'm so happy that I went outside of my comfort zone and I got to read this book. Number 6, no, just kidding. Number 7, favorite new author, and for me it's gonna have to be S.A. Cosby. I mean, I talked about this book already. I just love his storytelling in this book. I have his other books on my TBR. Blacktop Wastelands I own. It's somewhere back here on these shelves because that's where I keep my thrillers, and I'm so excited to jump into it because he just has a way with words and writing about important topics that you really don't feel like you're reading about important topics. Like I said when I talked about this one in the first question, this was just fantastic. And again, you're gonna continue seeing this book through the rest of the video. I'm sorry, but this was just phenomenal. Newest fictional crush. Miles from Funny Story. I feel like every time that I go and answer this question, it is a character from Emily Henry's book. She just knows how to write them. I love Miles. I love how he treats Daphne. I loved watching him grieving and going through the process of getting over his ex-girlfriend. I love his personality. I love just seeing him at work. I love seeing him with Daphne and her friends. He was just an all-around like stellar guy. I don't know why I said it like that, but I really did enjoy him, and he had me really swooning through the whole entire book. He does get a little too sappy towards the ending, but just for a little bit, not too much, but he was just fantastic in my opinion. Newest favorite character. There are a few for this one. The first one I want to talk about is, wait, what's her name? Chelsea Martin from The Violence. I started off the year with The Violence, I believed. I think it was Snowed In, and then I read this book. This was like my second book of the year, and I loved it so much. But Chelsea, what a kick-ass character. What I loved about her is that she did what she had to do to survive in this crazy world and to survive right alongside her daughters. In this book, we're following Chelsea, and they're in the middle of this like viral outbreak where people, when they get infected, they just turn into rage, they turn into violence, and they go for just one target, and once they're done with that, it's like they come back to life. It's like they black out when they go to their target, then they come back to, and they don't even realize what they have done. And so the world is going crazy. But Chelsea, and her two daughters are really in an abusive relationship. Her husband is the type of husband that wants his girls lined up waiting for him for when he gets home. The wife has to have a drink. They have to ask him how his day was, And so this craziness is going on, and Chelsea is trying to find a way to, number one, get away from this relationship before the abuse goes to her girls, because she has a real little toddler. I think she's 3 or 4 years old, and then she has an almost teen or a teenager, and the teenager is starting to see a little bit of the abuse, but the little one is spared because she's little. But she really wants to get out of this relationship, and so she comes up with the plan. It was just awesome watching this mom take numbers and kick ass. She was just amazing. But I also want to talk about Ike and Buddy Lee. These two characters were incredible. Their dynamic together, the way they just came together to find out the truth about the murders of their sons, was just amazing. And seeing them from two different sides of the road. We have Buddy Lee, which is white. He is trailer trash. He's a drunk. His wife left him, and obviously he's going through a lot of guilt because of the way he treated his son when his son came out to him. And then we have Ike. He's black. He's done time, but he's straightened out his life. He has his own company, but he's also dealing with guilt with how he treated his son. And he's done time. He's rough. And seeing these two characters come together, it was some of the most amazing moments to read, and I just had to add them on here because all three of these characters were just kick-ass. Next question is a book that made you cry. Razorblade Tears. Oh my gosh. I wasn't even expecting to cry in this book. I was reading it, I was falling in love with characters, and then boom, I found myself crying, and I couldn't believe it. I can't talk too much about why I was crying because it'll spoil some of the book, but it was just, oh my gosh. This had action. It made me cry. It made me laugh. It made me feel so many emotions. So good. But yeah, this was the one that made me cry. Another book that made me cry a little bit was Springtides at Swallowtail. Springtides at Swallowtail.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard for me to say this title.
Springtides at Swallowtail Bay. This one made me cry a little bit as well. Not as much as Razorblade Tears, but it did make me tear up a little bit with one of the characters. But usually I'm the type to cry a lot in books, and I've barely cried this year. Another one that made me cry was Bruises on a Butterfly by Chad Lutzke. I mean, his books always make me cry, so I feel like I don't even have to say this. The minute I say I read a Chad Lutzke book, just know that I cried. So those are really the only 3 books that made me cry this year, which is kind of weird. I'm a snotter. I love a book that makes me cry. It's weird. Book that made you happy. Obviously, funny story, but we've talked about this book a lot. So now let's get into Springtides at Swallowtail Bay again, because this book made me so happy. I was excited when I would go read it. Here we are following Stella. She is just recently divorced. She tries to buy this shop from this town called Swallowtail Bay. She ends up getting this shop that she wants to buy, and she just moves there and starts her life over again. And then we have Miles, and I believe his name is Miles. I think it's Miles. He is a member of this community at Swallowtail Bay. He grew up there, he was raised there, and he's gunning for this shop as well. He wants to buy the shop. His job requires him to travel a lot, and he really just wants to settle down, live his life, own his shop, and just be happy. He doesn't want to travel anymore. But obviously the deal falls through because Stella is the one that gets the shop. So there's already animosity there. Now Miles has a girlfriend when the book starts, but he starts noticing just odd behaviors in her, and just how rude she is to people, how she thinks she's better than anybody, and that starts turning him off a little bit. And so it's just following these two characters and this just amazing little town that's by the ocean. Every time she would talk about being able to listen to the waves from her apartment if she opened her windows, I just love that. Whenever she would walk her dog, because there's a dog in the story, I mean, How cute. Every time she walks her dog at the beach, it's just, I just transported myself there and it made me so, so happy. The only gripe in this book that I have is that there's like 2% of the real romance in the book. It's like, I feel like we're following this whole story for so long, and then in the last 5% of the book is when we see the actual romance blossom, and that sort of threw me off a little bit because I wanted a little bit more of the romance. But other than that, this book was just so happy to read. Is this considered cozy romance? If you've read this or you know anything about this book, let me know. I don't know what a cozy romance is. I know what a cozy mystery is, but is this considered cozy romance? Let me know, because if it is, I need to read more of this. If you have suggestions, leave them down below, because I'm always open for a suggestion, obviously. Most beautiful book that you've bought or have received for the year so far. I really didn't have any other book to talk about, but every time I look at this cover, it just really fills my soul. I don't know why, it's so simple, but that is Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. I have no idea what this book is about. I bought this solely because I was walking through Walmart. I barely buy books at Walmart. Every time I go to Walmart, I feel like I own all the books there. Obviously not all the books, but the books that I'm actually interested in. But I was just like walking, trying to get to another section, and I passed by this book and I was like, what is this? Along with another one of her books, Sinners and Saints or something like that. It has like some snakes. But this cover, I love strawberries. It's like my favorite fruit. Strawberries and pineapples, oh my goodness. Just give me a tub and I'll just, oh, how delicious. But just the colors, the white, the print, the title of the book, the red and the green, I just find something so delicious about this cover. And so that's why I chose this. This is really the prettiest book that I have bought so far. And you know what? I'm not complaining, because this is stunning. Hopefully the contents are just as good. Somebody commented about my diamond paintings the other day. I'm gonna give you a little sneak peek. Those are my diamond paintings. And then the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? How much time do you have? My whole entire TBR cart. I took a picture so that I could put it on here because I don't want to be moving my camera a lot. My TBR cart is right there. It's always staring at me. But on this TBR cart at the beginning of the year, I put in the 24 books I want to read for 2024. I don't know why I do that. I have only read one of those books. Obviously, we're in June if I'm filming this video. I've only read one of those 24 books. So I have 23 books to read there. And then I have my 12 blind dates with a book, which we talked about in my June TBR. I did pick 3 of those to read for this month. I haven't opened one yet, but hopefully next week I'll be able to crack one open. I chose 3 books off of my TBR cart to share with you for this question, but just know that my entire TBR cart, I have right now 35 books that I want to read before the end of the year, just from those 2 challenges that I put on. I don't know why I do the 24 and 24. I should have known better, but you know, every time I go into the new year, I have all these goals and aspirations and none of them ever happen. One of the books that I want to read out of this TBR cart is Madman Across the Water. I have had this for a couple years on my TBR and I'm dying to read it, by Carolyn Angel. I don't know what this is about. I saw somebody post about this years ago on Instagram. I read the synopsis, she made it sound so interesting, but at this point in time, years later, I don't remember anything of what this book is about other than it is a horror book. But this cover just really intrigued me, and just Madman. I mean, why wouldn't you read a book that has Madman in the title? I don't know why you wouldn't. Another one off my TBR cart that you guys have seen before, I believe, is Dreams of the Dying. I've had this on my TBR again for years. I saw Brittany talk about this a couple years ago. This is like a horror fantasy, and the way she described it, I was like, I need to read this. So I think this is the year. Tome Topple is back. It's starting next week. If you don't know what Tome Topple is, go check out Thoughts on Tomes, but it's basically reading books that are 500 pages or more for 2 weeks. I think it's finally happening and I'm so excited. And then the third book off of my TBR cart that I am sharing with you today is another one that I'm hoping to read for Tome Topple, and that's Ghoul in the Cape. Yeah, I'm reading the title off of here. Ghoul in the Cape by Josh Malerman. This is such a reflective book. It's a heavy ass book and it's thick. And you would think this is like 1,000 pages, but it's 700 pages, but the pages are really, really thick. It's a collector's edition and it's just a heavy ass book, but it's so pretty as well. I have no idea what this book is about. It's Josh Malerman, so I'm gonna read it, okay? But maybe you can check out the synopsis online as well for all 3 of these books, because I don't know anything. I'm going into all 3 of these blind, and I'm going really into all of my books on my TBR cart blind. I love going into a book blind, if you didn't know that about me. So that's why sometimes I fail at giving you guys synopsises, so I apologize about that. So that's it, you guys. Those are the books that made it onto my mid-year book freakout tag. Now, I want to know, what was your favorite book so far this year? Your most disappointing book so far this year? Maybe tell me a book that you DNF'd and what book you're looking forward to for the second half of the year. Let's chat books in the comment section down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.